Hey everybody, welcome to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center for Go Local Live. I'm your host, Rachel Nunes. Our first guest today is Jim Vincent. He's the president of NAACP Rhode Island. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
So the big news today is the letter sent to Governor Raimondo by Senators Metz, Quezada, and Cano calling for more diverse judges in the Ocean State. And can you give us a little bit of a summary on why this is important?
Well, it's important because in the state of Rhode Island, out of 90 judges and magistrates, only 2 are of color. There are only 2 judges of color out of almost 90 judges and magistrates in Rhode Island. So that's 2 out of 90, and the state is about 30% people of color. So clearly, the Rhode Island judiciary is not representative of the community within Rhode Island. So it's very important, and we support what Senator Metz and Quezada and Cano said in their letter. In fact, the NAACP has been championing that issue of diversity in the judiciary for years. And we feel that there's an excellent opportunity for the governor to appoint a person of color to the Superior Court. There is a person on the short list. Her name is Maria Farrell-Deaton. And also on the Worker Compensation Court, there is a person on the short list. His name is Keith Cardoza. And if Keith Cardoza is appointed a judge in the Worker Compensation Court, it would be the first time in Rhode Island history that a person of color had been appointed to the Worker Compensation Court. So we're excited, and we think that to go from 2 to 4 is certainly not a big deal for Rhode Islanders to accept, because there are 90 judges and magistrates.
So clearly there is this major issue of underrepresentation. And so you mentioned the possibility of a diverse judge on the Superior Court.
Yes.
What kind of precedent would that set for the lesser courts of Rhode Island?
Well, there's never been a judge of color in the Supreme Court, the Worker Compensation Court, or the Traffic Tribunal. There has been in the Superior Court, but as I opened up by saying, there are only 2 judges of color out of 90. Okay, so that's the key number there, 2 out of 90. So although there is a person of color on the Superior Court today, and the governor did appoint her, and the governor did appoint Rossi Harris to the Family Court last year, to be fair, still the issue is the fact that we have only 2 judges of color out of 90, and we need to have more. So 4 out of 90, and in fact, there are 2 district court openings, and if those 2 could be filled by people of color, that would be only 6 out of 90. And I understand there are 3 names that have made both lists, and they are Casby Harrison, Debbie Gonzalez, and Christopher Smith. So we certainly support them, because we desperately need to have a representative judiciary here in Rhode Island. I think everyone would agree with that.
And so what are some of the issues that come from this lack of representation?
Well, people have a lack of confidence in the judiciary. When you don't see people that look like you on a day-to-day basis, not to say that you don't think you can get, justice, but there's a disconnect in terms of how important, that is in terms of our state. Having a diverse judiciary is very important. Having a diverse institution in terms of the state police is very important. Having diversity throughout Rhode Island is very important. So clearly the judiciary is an important institution, and to have only 2 judges of color out of 90, nearly 90, certainly is not acceptable. We asked the governor to appoint somebody to the Superior Court and the Worker Compensation Court, because those 2 openings are coming up now. In the district court, there are going to be 2 openings, and there are 3 people of color on both, and they're all 5 lawyers are excellent, have long track records, and we feel that to have 6 out of 90 is something that still is not representative, but it's a long way from 2 out of 90.
Progress is progress.
Progress is progress, and there's an excellent opportunity. For years we heard there's no way in the pipeline. Now you have people in the pipeline that are superb, excellent, great experience, great lawyers. So let's do the right thing, and let's put them on the bench.
So do you think for people coming through the system, there's maybe a lack of cultural understanding by judges who aren't the same ethnicity as them? Do you think that's an issue?
Well, it's not a glaring issue, but of course, when you are not understanding of people, in general, there's a tendency to maybe be biased. Maybe there might be some implicit bias. I can't really, broad brush that. I don't want to broad brush that. My thing is to be more positive and to say that why not have qualified judges of color? And we certainly have 5 candidates coming up that are very qualified. Why not have them in the judiciary? It makes Rhode Island stronger. It makes people have more confidence in the judiciary. To me, it's a layup. It's a no-brainer. Let's do it. Let's have more judges of color on the bench. So I totally support Senators Metz, Quezada, and Cano in their effort to have the governor put more judges of color on the bench. The NAACP, Providence branch, totally endorses that concept.
And why do you think there has been this big disconnect for so long of so few judges of color?
Well, that's kind of complicated. You know, there has been a pipeline issue to be fair, but also there's the sense that, you know, it's a done deal, that, you know, people are not going to accept people of color, and they don't want to put themselves out there only to be rejected. There's not that confidence that there's a fair shot at it. I think now, and I think Governor Raimondo has demonstrated it because she has put 2 judges of color on the bench, people feel now that they're going to get a fair shot. There's going to be some movement in that area. So now they're applying more. We have some excellent lawyers of color that have applied, and they need to be on those in those roles. It will help other people in law school and young attorneys also to aspire to be judges in the future because they'll know what's possible.
Do you think it will help young people as well, maybe children perhaps who might feel like, oh, the system doesn't understand me, to realize this is something I can do, or if I do become part of this system, I will.
It does.
It will treat me right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, people, you know, in a broad brush on being discriminated against in the judiciary. I'm not saying that.
Of course.
But what I'm saying positively is that we need more judges of color in the Rhode Island judiciary. There are only 2 out of nearly 90. And I want to keep hammering that home because that's unacceptable. That's ridiculous. You know, so what I'm saying is that, yeah, young people all across the board are going to have more confidence in that Rhode Island judiciary. And I think it makes for a better state, a stronger state. And we need to do it. We had 2 judges that passed away in the last year and a half, Judge Stone and Judge Clifton, and that's unfortunate. But, you know, we need to replace them, not so much replacing them, but we need to replace people on those courts that reflect the diversity of the state. Let's do it. Let's have more diversity on the bench. The NAACP Providence branch totally supports the Black and Latino caucus members, Senator Metz, Senator Quezada, and Senator Cano.
And is this just an issue in Rhode Island, or is this a national issue as well? Do we see this kind of severe disconnect across the country?
It's an issue, but I think it's much more pronounced in Rhode Island. I mean, for example, in a neighboring state, which is Massachusetts, they've had 2 chiefs of the Supreme Court, the Massachusetts Supreme Court, who are black. We've never had a person of color, of any color, in terms of ethnic people of color, on the Supreme Court, ever. And then the chief of the Minnesota Supreme Court, at least a few years ago, was a black person as well. So here's Minnesota, Massachusetts. You know, we're not talking about states that have huge populations of black folks or even people of color that have had chiefs of the Supreme Court. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, we should put somebody on the Supreme Court when there's no vacancy. There's vacancies in the Superior Court, there's a vacancy in Workers' Compensation Court, and there are 2 vacancies in the District Court. We need to fill them with people of color because that will mean we'll have 6 people out of 90, still way below the 30% of the population that's reflective of people of color. But it's a step in the right direction. We need to do it, we need to do it now. And the NAACP strongly supports this, and we also strongly support our Black and Latino caucus, Senator Metz, Senator Quezada, and Senator Cano.
And what other steps do you think need to be taken more generally to help encourage young people to approach these careers and go become lawyers, become judges, aspire to these kind of careers?
Well, you know, mentorship always is helpful at all levels, you know, so that's important. But in terms of being a Rhode Island judge, the best incentive for young people in terms of wanting to become a judge is to see judges of color on the bench. So you have to appoint more judges of color on the bench. And when people see that, and they see that they will get a fair shot, then you're going to see that pipeline grow exponentially. You have to, the proof is in the pudding. You got to not talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. The governor has put 2 people of color on the bench, so she's done a great job there. But right now, there's only 2. We need more than 2. There are going to be about 4 openings. 1 in Superior Court, Maria Farrow-Deaton, as a person of color. She's excellent. So I see her as a person that would be a strong candidate for that seat. Keith Cardoza, another excellent candidate for Worker Compensation Court. So I see him as a great candidate for that court. And then the 3 I mentioned, Casby Harrison, Debbie Gonzalez, and Christopher Smith. All 3 excellent candidates for those district court openings that are coming up. So I myself, you know, would be very happy to see those 4 vacancies filled by people of color. And I think that they're as qualified, if not more qualified, than anybody that's been sent up to the governor.
And do you think it's likely that she will appoint these people to the course?
I can't predict it. I think that it's more likely than less likely. but I can't predict it. I'd also like to say that the judicial nominating panel, we want to make sure they understand that in the district court, those vacancies, it's in their hands. So they're the ones that submit 5 names for each of those vacancies. What's happened with the Superior Court and the Worker Compensation Court is those names have already been submitted to the governor, so now she has them on her desk. So Maria Ferro-Deaton, Superior Court, and Keith Cardoza, Worker Compensation Court, are on her desk. So all she has to do is pick them, and then they would have to be approved by the Senate. And I think the Senate, you have 3 senators that spoke to go local. I think the Senate would be very, very approving of those picks.
And when it comes to those nominating panels as well, do we see enough diversity there as well? It's of course not just in the judges as well, but in the entire system. Are we seeing enough diversity throughout the system?
No, we don't see the diversity at all in the system. The JNC, good people on the JNC, but I think there's 8 people there now and 1 vacancy. I'm not quite sure. It's supposed to be 9. I think there's 1 person of color on the JNC. And I think at the most, and maybe there were 2 ever at one time. So certainly that body is not reflective of the diversity of our state. So really that's important. You've got to have some diversity there as well, because they're the ones making the selections that go to the governor for her final selection, and that which goes to the Senate for final approval. So yeah, we need more diversity with the JNC, Judicial Nominating Commission, and we need more diversity on the courts. So as I said, there's only 2 judges of color out of nearly 90, if you can believe that. That's incredible. Certainly nothing that for Rhode Islanders should be proud of. We need to increase it. We should go to 6 out of 90. There are 4 vacancies, so let's put them on.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, providing your insight. We really do appreciate it. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with our next guest here on Go Local Live.
Thank you, Rachel, for the opportunity.
Thank you.